Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Beth Gurleva, and I'm the Professional Development Specialist of the Midwest Early Childhood Family and Community Engagement Center located in Monroe BOCES 1. I have been with Monroe BOCES 1 for the past 11 years, providing supports to families and providers on the special education process. Previous to coming to Monroe 1, I worked for over 20 years as a program administrator and a social worker at special education preschool programs. The EC FACE is what we like to call ourselves, and we provide information, support, and referral assistance to families and providers who may have concerns about a child with a known disability, possible delays in development, or who may be at risk for a developmental delay. The Early Childhood FACE Center serves a multi-county region, which includes Genesee, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Wayne, Wyoming, Yates, Steuben, Schuyler, and Cayuga counties. We are a part of a network that includes 14 other early childhood FACE centers across New York State. All of our services are free and are made possible by the contract from the New York State Education Department. And so now I'd like to introduce Barb.
So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barb Wisnowski, and I joined the Monroe 1 BOCES and Early Childhood Support Contracts in July of 2016. My title currently is Resource and Referral Specialist. Prior to joining Beth in 2016, I worked for more than 20 years in an early childhood agency where I was the coordinator of the Preschool Evaluation Center, the Preschool Counseling Services provided by our agency, as well as our Head Start Family Services program. I assisted parents and children through the preschool evaluation process, helping them gain access to preschool special education and services from their school districts. So this topic today, the EI to preschool transition, is a process that I worked with many, many families through. My background is in school counseling, and I help families understand how New York State education services in the special education realm work, and I help them access supports from other community resources as well.
Great, thank you. All right, so I am having just a little bit of technical difficulty here with my slides. I'm sorry, there we go. Okay, today this training will provide a brief introduction to the EI to CPSE transition process. The goals identified on the slide will help you to better understand your role in the transition process, the process as it relates to the New York State Education Department and the Education 200 regulations regarding the Committee on Preschool Special Education, and the importance of the family caregiver in the process, so that everyone feels included, especially families are looked at as a valued member of the team. So let's just take a minute and to review the goals on the slide today. So we're going to learn about the role of the Early Intervention Program, which we call EI or EIP, the Committee on Preschool Special Education, which we call CPSE, as it relates to the transition process, learn about the timelines and vocabulary, and learn about the role of the family, the guardian, the provider, and the county, and the CPSE, which is the school district. So as the child approaches 2 to 2.5, the process for transition will begin. The family will have 3 choices when it is time to exit. The child transitions to preschool special education, the child is not eligible for preschool special education, or the child is connected to other community programs and resources. While the child is still in early intervention, the service coordinator begins to develop a transition plan for the child. The service coordinator will meet with the family and explain the transition scenarios described on the screen. Who decides whether a referral is made to CPSE? That decision is made by the parents, the early intervention official designee, or who we call an EIOD, the service coordinator, and current service providers. CPSE is a voluntary service just like early intervention. As the parent, they can make the decision not to refer their child to the CPSE, even if other believes the child should be referred. The service coordinator discusses with the parent if they want to refer their child to the CPSE and to begin the transition process. Discussions will focus on if the parent feels that the child no longer needs specialized services, or they do and they have a desire to engage in the preschool process. If the parent chooses not to transition their child, then the child will continue in early intervention services until the day before their 3rd birthday. If the family's choice is to start the transition process will begin not fewer than 90 days before the child is first potentially eligible for preschool special education services at the discretion of all parties, and not more than 9 months before the child's 3rd birthday. If the family chooses not to transition the child to CPSE, or if the child is not potentially eligible for preschool services under Section 4410 of Education Law, the service coordinator with parental consent shall make reasonable efforts to convene a conference with the early intervention official, the parent, and providers of other appropriate services to discuss services that the child may receive in their community. This could include early education, Head Start, early Head Start, childcare programs, or other appropriate services. Please remember that not all children currently in early intervention will be referred to the CPSE. Children may make enough progress from CPSE that they may be discharged from early intervention services. This occurs, there's the local agencies who may be able to provide support to young children and their families. In any of the cases described, a transitional plan must be developed for children exiting early intervention. A transition plan in early intervention will address the following: review of progress, identify services needed, determine whether to refer to the Committee on Preschool Special Education, address required timelines to ensure continuity of services, identify community resources that can assist the family if appropriate, establish a date for EI services to end, set up a or establish the next steps. The first step in the transition process is the notification to the school district. The service coordinator can notify school districts up to 120 days before the child first is eligible, but no later than 90 days before they are first eligible for preschool services. Most districts will be notified by the service coordinator Appendix E form. It's called the consent form for preschool special education. The service coordinator will complete this form with the family. The top portion of the form provides for the child and the family. The bottom has 2 check boxes for the parents to consent to the district and consent to the release of EI records and reports to the district, or there are 2 check boxes or for the use of reports.
So
Parents may give consent to.
Beth, your voice is kind of going in and out, so I don't know if it's your headphones or if you're moving your head a lot. So it's hard to, it kind of goes in and out a little bit.
Okay, so let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yes, very clearly.
Is this better?
Yes.
Hear me, Laura.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Go ahead.
Laura, can you hear me better now?
You sound clearer now.
Okay. All right, Laura. Okay, now I sound clear. Okay, let's see. I just move myself around and see if that works. Does that work better for you now?
Just don't move around too much. Yep. Great.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me see. Okay, so the parent may give consent to a referral but not give consent to release of EI records and reports to be utilized to assist in the determination of eligibility. So some families may choose to make a referral to the school district, but do not want previous reports used in determining eligibility in the preschool setting. This may be because they want a new baseline for their child. They may not agree with previous reports provided by their service providers, or they're just looking for a different opinion. And so don't want to use that information to skew anyone's point of view when they're looking at eligibility. So we always encourage families to discuss this form with their service coordinator to make sure that they're giving consents that they feel most appropriate to do, and understand the reasons why they would make a referral to CPSE, why wouldn't they, and why would they want information either considered or not considered with the resources from early intervention. So the transition conference. With parent consent, the service coordinator will convene a transition conference at least 90 days prior to the child's eligibility for services under education law, or no fewer than 90 days before the child's third birthday, whichever is first, provided, however, that such conference shall not be held more than 9 months prior to the child's birthday to review program options and, if appropriate, establish a transition plan. So the transition conference is the first opportunity for the school district and the families to come together to introduce themselves, to talk about what's going to happen moving forward. Please be reminded that the transition conference is not the initial eligibility meeting, or what many people refer to as the transition meeting. The transition conference is also not a pre-CPSE meeting. The transition conference is held to help the parent understand the changes that will happen when transitioning to get to the CPSE, provide parents the chance to meet the CPSE person and begin communications with their school districts, and consent to evaluate in a timely manner, which is so important and vital to the continuation of services in preschool. It is also a time for the CPSE chairperson to answer questions about the use of transportation, the evaluation process, how eligibility for children will be determined, and program and service options. The CPSE chairperson should always discuss the differences in early intervention and CPSE programs so that the parent is better prepared for their child's CPSE meeting. The transition conference can also benefit the district by giving the district a chance to get to know the family, understanding the family's needs, begin to develop a long-term meaningful relationship with the family, having engagement with the family prior to that initial eligibility meeting, assist in making the CPSE meeting run more smoothly, and is an opportunity to answer any questions in advance of the CPSE meeting. The service coordinator is responsible for offering and facilitating the transition meeting, and the CPSE chairperson should be in attendance. The transition conference can be held at the district office, can be held virtually via a platform like Zoom or Google Meets, or by telephone. I would encourage anyone that's involved in a transition conference to really utilize that virtual platform. Families have said in the past that getting off time from work, or when the district is available, they're not available, or childcare comes up. So this would be a great way for families to have this meeting that's more convenient for all the parties. And I highly encourage the families and those that work with families that are transitioning to participate in the transition conference with their district. This is the first opportunity to meet those people that will have an impact in their life going forward. It's an opportunity to make that connection. So, decisions, how do we move forward? One of the biggest things to remember in New York State is that New York State does not mean 3. So 3 does not mean 3 in New York State. Parents have the choice to have their children remain in early intervention past their 3rd birthday, or to have their child enter CPSE before their 3rd birthday. Children cannot be in EI and CPSE at the same time. For the child to remain in early intervention past their 3rd birthday, the following criteria must be met. So take a look at the slide. The child is referred to the CPSE, an evaluation or a review of records is conducted, the child is found eligible for preschool special education services prior to their 3rd birthday, and an individual education program, which we call an IEP, is developed. So all of those things must occur before a family can choose to have their child remain in early intervention past their 3rd birthday. So why might a parent want their child to remain in early intervention past their 3rd birthday? Because many parents choose to have their child stay in EI as long as possible so that their child can receive services during the summer months without having to show regression to qualify for what preschool calls extended school year services, or ESY services, or so that the services remain at the home or natural environment. Families may not be ready for their child to attend a bricks and mortar preschool program, and to maintain the flexibility with the delivery of services. So in early intervention, services can be provided 365 days a year at any time during the day that's convenient for parents. When a child transitions to preschool, they are then locked into a service delivery model that meets school. So Monday through Friday, excluding school holidays, and during the traditional school day, which is often 9 to 3. However, parents can also make the decision to have their child transition prior to their child's 3rd birthday. In this scenario, the same criteria must be met on the slide. One of the main reasons I see most families choosing to transition their child prior to their 3rd birthday is to secure a classroom placement. This often occurs for those children who have birthdays between the months of September and December. In this situation, if they wait until the child turns 3, the child would probably not be able to participate in a center-based program until the following September. This slide explains how long a child can remain in EI if the district has completed the 4 items on the previous slide. So let's take a look at the timelines. If the child's birthday is between January 1st and August 31st, they can remain in early intervention until September 1 of the year they turn 3. If the child's birthday is between September 1 and December 31st, they can remain in EI until January 2nd of the next year. If eligibility for CPSE is not determined prior to the child's 3rd birthday, EI services cease the day before the child's 3rd birthday. It is very important that a meeting with the district is held prior to the child's 3rd birthday. If this does not happen, EI services will end, and CPSE services cannot start because they have not been found eligible. The state education department is very clear that if the district does not hold an initial CPSE meeting prior to the child's 3rd birthday to determine eligibility, the child will lose EI services. It does not matter the reason for which the meeting did not occur. It could have been a snow day. It could have been that the chairperson was out sick that day. It could have been that the family called and all of a sudden wanted to reschedule the meeting because that was no longer convenient for them. There is no reason for which a meeting can be held after the child's 3rd birthday that they would be eligible for continuing EI services. So I encourage parents, service providers, and service coordinators to make sure that that child's meeting is held at least 2 weeks prior to the child's 3rd birthday. This then gives you some wiggle room if you need to change that meeting date. Also consider that if an in-person meeting is proving difficult to schedule, that you and your district hold a meeting virtually, like we talked about before, or even to do it via phone. It's not ideal, but the essential component is that the determination of eligibility at least 1 day before the child turns 3. Okay. If for some reason that initial eligibility meeting is not held and the child is not determined eligible, then the family is going to have to make a decision whether or not they want to resubmit the referral to CPSE is a brand new referral. So something that the family would then have to consider. So this slide tells us when a child can enter preschool services. Some will enter before they turn 3, and some will enter as late as 3 years, 8 months. So in general, the parameters are, if a child's birthday is between January 1 and June 30th, services can begin on January 2nd of the year he or she turns 3. If a child's birthday is between July 1 and December 31st, services can begin on July 1 of the year he or she turns 3 years old. So in the first set of dates, the child will be transitioning early. In the second set of dates, the child will be transitioning after they turn 3. So the dates are very important for people to remember. I just want to keep that in mind. So on the screen, you'll see a slide that indicates the way that EI and preschool are similar and different. You also have this as a handout. And so this is something that you can look at more closely on your own. But one of the things that I'll share from my experience is that I think one of the most difficult things for parents to wrap their heads around is that in preschool, they no longer have access to a service coordinator. So in early intervention, there's a service coordinator that helps them through that process, that helps them maneuver the different systems. In preschool, they do not have that. And so that's one of the things that's most difficult for families. I encourage all families that are transitioning from early intervention to preschool to put in an application to the Office of Persons with Developmental Disabilities to see if their child is eligible for OPWDD. And then one of the services they could access would be a service coordinator. And that service coordinator could help them move through that preschool process. So I would encourage you to take some time later and take a look at the ways that EI and preschool are similar and different.
Okay, so this is Barb, and I'm going to take over from here and talk about preschool special education. So every school district has a committee on preschool special education office. That CPSE is responsible for providing special education services to children around age 3. Now that we know from Beth that it can happen before a child's 3rd birthday or after a child's 3rd birthday. And they remain, as long as they remain eligible, meet the eligibility criteria, they can remain in preschool until age 5 or they become kindergarten eligible and meet that cutoff. So as this slide indicates, the CPSE's job really is to receive the initial referral and obtain parental consent from you for the evaluation. They arrange for an evaluation with an approved multidisciplinary evaluator agency. They schedule and hold the meeting, the CPSE meeting, to review and determine eligibility for the preschool special education services and supports. And if your child is eligible, the CPSE develops the individual education program, the IEP. So the IEP replaces your IFSP, your individual family service plan. Children must meet the eligibility requirements to qualify for services, and we're going to discuss those eligibility criteria in just a few moments. One of the things I wanted to point out here is that we have to remember that preschool is a service. It's not a place. Just like the services that your child received in early intervention, the preschool term is also an umbrella term that encompasses all the possible services your child may receive because he or she is now a preschool age child. So in our communities, we have a lot of different terms for preschool. Nursery schools, school districts have universal pre-kindergarten programs, so we hear that term preschool, but in terms of preschool special education, it's specific to the CPSE services. So Beth, we'll go to the next slide, please. So on this diagram, or this graphic, you see the timeline for the transition to CPSE. Beth has talked a little bit about some of the time frames, but this is more specific here. The entire process from time of referral to possibly annual to meeting, is 60 calendar days. And then once a child's determined, there's the annual timeline there that you see. So this comes from New York State education regulations, and they require how long the process must take. So everybody who's involved in this process, the school district, the evaluators, everybody goes in to this process understanding those 60 calendar days. It's important to understand that the development and implementation of the IEP is based on whether your child is determined eligible for those preschool programs and services at the CPSE meeting in step 3. If your child is not eligible, the committee does not recommend an IEP or develop an IEP. When your child is eligible, the implementation of the IEP will not begin until the EI services have ended, as Beth has highlighted previously. It is possible to request a review at any point of the individual education program, but if there is no request, then the annual review is held within 1 year of the date of the IEP. So that gives you a general kind of timeline. You can dig back in the regulations and procedural safeguards for parents, and these things will be outlined. Okay, Beth, we're going to go to the next slide, please. Okay, we're going to talk about the preschool process, in particular the evaluation. So you'll choose your evaluation site, and then you'll have a scheduled date and time to go for the evaluation, or when your child will be seen. You want to think about some things as you approach this evaluation appointment. You'll want to think about if your child will easily separate from you, and think about what specific areas you are concerned about. Discuss them with the evaluation team. Share the information you feel is relevant. Things like your child's temperament, his or her interests, strengths, weaknesses, or any other unique things about him or her to help the evaluation team members who don't know your child approach the situation in as friendly of a manner as they can. You should have an idea when you leave the evaluation appointment of what your child's needs are. It is important to understand the evaluators may only make recommendation to the CPSE. So based on all the information that they gather, the assessments they do, and the discussions they have with you, they're in a position to make a recommendation. The evaluators and parents are members of the CPSE, and together you will all reach consensus as to the needs and what services will be recommended for your child. Nothing is guaranteed until it's on the IEP, which is developed at that initial CPSE meeting. There also are some maybes in this evaluation process, preschool evaluation process. One maybe will include formal testing, as there are times when an evaluation from early intervention may be used. The CPSE would review those documents they receive from your service coordinator and decide, are these current and valid? Some children may have just recently received an early intervention core evaluation, and this information is determined to still be an accurate assessment of your child's development, and no further testing is really needed by the CPSE to determine eligibility. I think particularly in Monroe County, we find that the early intervention program, when they receive a referral for that initial evaluation, will find an evaluator who has a school psychologist on the team, and then they will use that evaluation agency so that assessments don't have to be repeated. That's one of the differences between early intervention and preschool, is who does that learning or cognitive evaluation. In preschool, it's required that a school psychologist do that, or in early intervention, it's often a special education teacher. Another maybe is that the evaluations will warrant a recommendation for services. The preschool evaluation may show that your child has made progress and gained skills through the early intervention program, and that brings him within, expected developmental milestone guidelines. It's important to remember that this is a good thing. Your child is now within developmental milestones and a cause for celebration. The early intervention program did what it was intended to do and got your child up to where it needed to be. Okay, Beth, next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit here about what the evaluation includes. There's some similarities and some differences from when the child was evaluated in early intervention. So the components that you see on this slide up through the observation, the first 4 are required components for all children. We're going to talk about additional details on our next slide about what other evaluations are considered by the CPSE. Physical exam and immunization record are typically obtained from your child's physician and are used by the evaluators to assess their health, vision, hearing, as well as to document that immunizations are current. The social history is a report that includes the child's developmental history and family information. It provides the background and context for why you as parents have pursued having your child evaluated for preschool special education. The psychological evaluation is completed by a school psychologist, as I just mentioned, and really their job, or his or her job, is to test learning potential, the abilities and educational strengths and needs, as well as behavior and social emotional development. The observation of a child is defined by the New York State Education Department regulations as an observation of the student in the student's learning environment, including the regular classroom setting, or in the case of a student less than school age or out of school, an environment appropriate for a child of that age to document the student's academic performance and behavior in the areas of difficulty. So the observation is a required component of the evaluation, and parents need to make their child available for this observation as well as the testing sessions with the professionals. Examples of where an observation could take place are at daycare, at playgroup, at home, at nursery school, in a Head Start classroom, or other preschool classrooms such as an early pre-kindergarten program or a universal pre-kindergarten program. The other that's listed on the slide really indicates other appropriate assessments or evaluations of the child in areas of concern, and may include a functional behavioral assessment. This is done in particular when the primary concern for the child is his or her behavior. The evaluation reports must be sent by the evaluator to the CPSE and the parent, giving parents enough time to review prior to the meeting. Okay, the next slide, please, Beth. So the list on this slide outlines the 5 domains of development that are assessed in a preschool evaluation, the 5 areas that we look at. So very similar to early intervention. They look at the motor skills, which are the small and large muscles, the cognitive, which is the learning potential, the language and communication, adaptive or self-help skills, how does this child meet his or her needs, the social, emotional, behavioral, and physical. Additional team members, such as a speech, occupational, or physical therapist, may complete portions of the evaluation if the child's primary difficulties lie within their area of specialty. So those motor skills, those physical skills. These additional assessments are determined based on the areas of concern that you present as a parent and that come from the early intervention program during the transition process. The CPSE chair is responsible for determining the areas of need, and parental consent must be provided for any evaluations conducted by the evaluators. So you play an important role in being informed in what's happening and giving permission for that to occur. The evaluators also gather information aside from the formalized testing with the child through the social history, the observation, and the physical examination we mentioned on the previous slide. So their job is really to take a holistic picture of the child, look at all aspects of this child's development, and put that information together so that the CPSE can remember or can make a determination about supports and services. It's important to remember that the purpose of this evaluation is to assess and examine a child's skills, determine their level of functioning, and help determine those recommendations for services. And as parent participation is really important and includes discussing your concerns as a parent, sharing if your child's performance during the testing is consistent with his or her skills that you see at home, sharing how he or she has developed over time, what's been the pattern that you've observed, and again, discussing things like temperament, interests, strengths, and needs. So input from parents is highly valued by the evaluation team. Okay, Beth, next slide, please. So you want to think about what would you like people to know about your child? Again, remember parent participation and input is so beneficial to this evaluation process, as well as the CPSE meeting. It's important for you to share information you feel is relevant with regard to things like the temperament, the interests, the strengths, the weaknesses, or the uniqueness of your child. In your handouts, you'll see a handout entitled All About Me. You can access this as part of this training. This handout is an outline you can use as a tool to help you discuss your child during the evaluation and also at the CPSE meeting. Sometimes when parents or any of us get into situations, we had all these thoughts prior and then we get into the situation and think, what were those questions or what were those points I wanted to make? So it's a really good idea to write things down. So this is a handy outline for you to do that. So think about what challenges your child had, what you've discovered that works. So you're with this child all the time, so you know what works better than others sometimes, way your child learns, how to read your cues. All right, I'm going to turn this back over to Beth. She's going to review the eligibility criteria and the CPSE meeting process.
Great. So on the screen, you are looking at the eligibility criteria that comes from Part 200 regulation and are the delays that the evaluator will reference in their evaluation reports to the CPSE. This information will be used by the committee to determine whether the child is eligible for services. Not every evaluation team will document all the criteria in their reports. Delay will be documented based on standardized test protocol or evaluator preference. Therefore, the committee members must be familiar with all the criteria to determine eligibility for a preschooler with a disability. So as you look on the screen, the identifiable areas of disability will be a 12-month delay in one or more of the areas that Barb just mentioned on the previous slide, the cognitive, social, emotional, motor, language, and adaptive, or a 33% delay in one or two delay in these two areas, or a score of 2 standard deviation below the mean, or a 1.5 standard deviation below in 2 areas. So it's really important that when families or other folks that are supporting the family in understanding what the criteria is for a child to be determined eligible for preschool services. These are the primary areas that will be identified in the reports that the committee will use to make the determination. It is also very important that the CPSE committee document and consider multiple sources of information. That's why Barb had indicated that all of those components are so vital to the evaluation, including the parents' input. Standardized test scores should not be used as the only source for determining a significant delay in functioning domain or skill area. So we're looking at what does a parent think, possible previous reports from early intervention. So we're getting a real holistic view of the child. Additionally, on your screen, these are select classifications that if a preschool child meets the Part 200 definitions for the classification, then they can be eligible for preschool services. Even though the definitions on the screen are disability specific, when a preschool is determined eligible for preschool, they are a preschool child with a disability, not regarding any of those possible other diagnoses. So no matter if a child qualifies under speech and language or qualifies under a delay in the motor area, any child in preschool will be classified as a preschool student with a disability. Okay. Once the child is evaluated, the CPSE meets to discuss the results of the evaluation and to make recommendations. The meeting notice will indicate the meeting location. If the child is found eligible for services, the CPSE is responsible for developing the individual education program, the IEP, for the child. Please remember that families are an integral and that they do have a voice. And so they should feel like they have that opportunity to share their concerns, share what their child's strengths and needs are, and really have an understanding of what goes into making a determination of eligibility, recommendations for that IEP if found eligible. So this slide shows us who are members of the Preschool Special Education Committee, also known as the CPSE. So the members include the parent of the child. We want to have a general education teacher on the committee, at least one. Their role is to be able to provide us what is typical development. What are the skill sets that we should be seeing in those areas evaluated for a typical child in that age range and those skill sets. Remember that this child is coming from early intervention, so they already have service providers. So we want to make sure that there's at least a special education teacher or another service provider from their early intervention team on the committee to help represent the skill sets the child currently has and provide some looking back on progress the child has made during the early intervention program. We have the chairperson, who is the person that facilitates the meeting and acts as the school district representation. There can be a parent member upon request. A parent member is someone that is also in the same school district as the family. They have a child that is currently in preschool or has recently been in preschool special education. And they're there to help the family understand the process or be a support to the family during their CPSE meeting. Please be aware, though, a parent member must be requested either by the school district or the parent at least 72 hours prior to the meeting. This allows the parent member ample time to be able to put the meeting in their schedule and to let all parties know that this person has been requested. There's the evaluator of the child, the person, the agency representative that completed the preschool evaluation. The representative from EI is invited, but the meeting can go on without them there. This representative is usually the EI service coordinator. Generally what we ask, since that person is invited, that the school district reach out to the parent and find out from the parent if they do want their service coordinator invited to that meeting. The parent may not want the service coordinator invited, and we don't want to make the assumption that that's an automatic invite. It should be a discussion between the school district and the parent because they are an invited member. There's also a county representative, which we often refer to as a municipality rep. They're invited, and we encourage them to attend, but in most counties, there's one county municipal rep for the whole county, and we know that multiple CPSE meetings are held in multiple districts on the same day, and so that rep can't be at every meeting. So we want to make sure they're invited, but the meeting can proceed without the rep being present. And then also we want to invite anyone who has knowledge or expertise of the child at request of the district or the parent. So maybe there is a child care provider that knows the child very well, and the parent would like that person there to help identify their strengths and needs and how that child reacts to situations in different environments. Maybe there's someone in the family that's a special education teacher, and they would like that person there for support. It's often of a benefit to families to have someone else there with them that can take notes, that can jot down information, as Barb said previous, can make sure that questions are being asked, because it's often difficult for a family to hear everything that's going on, but then also try to take in what else is happening during the meeting. So on the slide are the identified roles for the committee. The first two bullets of the CPSE chairperson ensures are completed on behalf of the committee. Again, as discussed on an earlier slide, during the meeting, the committee will review evaluations, determine eligibility, and develop an IEP. When the committee is recommending program option, the committee must always consider least restrictive environment, or what we call LRE. And this is the placement of an individual student with a disability in the least restrictive environment. And it should provide the special education needed by the student, provide for education of the student to the maximum extent appropriate to the needs of the student with other students who do not have disabilities, and be as close as possible to the student's home. It is the role of the committee to come to consensus, but in the event that this cannot happen, it's the responsibility of the chairperson, who is also known as the local educational agent, to make the final decision. Eligibility must be determined, and an IEP must be developed, even if the child will not be transitioning for several months at this initial eligibility meeting. Do not wait to develop an IEP closer to the child's transition date. There must be a record of the committee's determination and the plan that's being recommended. So now I'll turn it over to Barb.
Okay, so we wanted to kind of dive into the IEP a little bit. What does that document look like? This replaces the individual family service plan, and it looks very different, although some information may look similar, the format. So parents have a role in the development of this IEP, and they offer valuable information, especially when it comes to the present levels of performance. This really paints a picture of the child in everyday activities and abilities, what they're able to do, and what things are considered age appropriate. So we're identifying needs, but we're also identifying the strengths of this child in this present level of performance section. Then goals are developed based on the evaluation results, as well as input from all the CPSE members, including you as the parent. Overall, the goals are based on those present levels of performance. What do we want this child to, in the needs area, where do we want them to get next to? They're individual and specific to the child. They're measurable, meaning we can note progress on skills gained, and they are able to be accomplished in a year's time. So we're thinking we set up these goals for the annual purpose to achieve at the end, similar to the IFSP goals that were looked at every 6 months. Now we're taking an annual look at these things. And goals are based on those foundational skills versus curriculum that all preschoolers should achieve. Thus, the goals are more functional in nature, so as to achieve developmental progress. You can think in terms of routine activities of daily living. This helps us understand that the IEP is to prepare children with difficulties or disabilities for life during and after school. This also helps the school understand that teaching children how to function in the world is just as important as teaching academic skills. So when drafting goals, all should consider what are the skills this child needs to acquire to be developmentally on track. Progress towards achieving those annual goals needs to be reviewed and reported to parents at least as often as report cards are typically sent to children in the general education population. So that's typically every 10 weeks or quarterly. So you as parents can expect to receive progress reports quarterly on how your child is progressing towards that annual goal. The CPSE discusses and recommends special education programs and related services and supports for the child based on those present levels of performance and the annual goals that have been discussed. Included in that discussion will be program accommodations and modifications that your child may require to be successful in achieving his or her annual goals in the learning environment. So an example of that might be that some children need to sit closer to the teacher in order to pay attention and understand. So that would be an accommodation or a modification that might be noted, that they have preferential seating in all learning activities. Okay, Beth, we'll go to the next slide, please. So how do you prepare for the CPSE meeting? Lots happened through this evaluation process, so you want to go into that meeting feeling like you're prepared. So we want to emphasize the important role that parents play, and they should feel free to share their concerns and insights about the child that will help in the development of the plan for him or her. So on the slide, you can see some suggestions. You want to talk with your child service providers in early intervention. You want to review those past reports and plans. It's interesting when you do that, you'll see how children make progress over time. You're living it every day, but then you really see where they started and where they ended, or where they're ending in early intervention, and you'll see that progress. You want to obtain copies of materials to be used at the meeting, so you want to make sure you have a good packet and that you've reviewed everything. I mentioned earlier writing down questions that you have. You might want to invite someone to attend the meeting with you so that you can listen and provide reminders about what to say. Identify what you believe will support your child's growth and development, and contact the chairperson if need be to request a change in the meeting date, time, or location. Again, keeping in mind those timelines for the transition and it happening before the child's third birthday. So this list and that All About Me handout would help you gather your thoughts and keep all your notes in one handy place. Okay, Beth, next slide, please. So the annual review. So thinking back to that diagram, the annual review was the fifth step in that process. So at least once per year, the committee will review the child's individual education program to determine if the goals for the student are being achieved, and make recommendations for the next school year based on their progress, any reevaluations or new information that's occurred. And it should be noted that reviews can occur more frequently and are done to discuss changes to the child's current program. So this really here's an example of how this might work. Your child has been receiving speech therapy 3 times a week individually. Your child's therapist now feels that he or she would like him to practice skills in a group session. The IEP might be changed to reflect speech therapy to two individual sessions per week and 1 group session, so they have a chance to practice their skills. So we don't need to wait till the annual review to do that. The child's making progress. Now the therapist wants to see them interacting more with peers, so they may change the IEP. So those reviews can occur more frequently when changes to the current special education program are needed. Okay, next slide, Beth. So on this slide, you see a continuum of services. So the IEP really includes what services a child will receive, how often those services will occur, like 1 time a week, 2 times a week, 3 times a week, etc. How long those sessions will last, 30 minutes or 60 minutes, for example. Where those services will take place, such as school in a special class, or in the general education classroom, like in a UPK or EP program, or in therapy rooms or counselors' offices if they're going to pull them out and see them individually in a separate location, or at home. So Beth talked about, bricks and mortar being one option under preschool. Some children continue to receive their services at home, their speech therapy or occupational therapy at home under the CPSE program, because that's where their needs are and that's the extent of the program that they need. The continuum really describes each type of service, and the top of the chart reflects the least restrictive environment. So Beth kind of highlighted the least to most restrictive environment earlier, and that the regulations really make the committee consider what's least restrictive to accomplish this child's goals. So it starts with the related services, such as speech, occupational or physical therapy. Then it moves to a special education itinerant services, which means those services provided by a special education teacher. The CS and related services means that a special education teacher and some therapists will provide. The special class in an integrated setting means that the child will attend a designated preschool program in a classroom that has a mixture of children that have IEPs and some children that are more typically developing and do not have an IEP. And the special class is the designated preschool classroom that has all the children enrolled that have an IEP in place. So again, the federal regulations under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act says that children who receive special education should learn in the least restrictive environment. So not only is that supported by New York State, really that's a federal regulation that all states must follow. So that means they should spend as much time as possible with peers who do not receive special education. So your committee is going to recommend services to be provided in the least restrictive environment. Okay, Beth, next slide, please. So the location of those services, where could those take place? They could take place at home, workplace of the provider. So some children go into a more clinic or facility-based program to receive their therapy. Some children receive their services at childcare, Head Start, nursery school, pre-K, or the center-based program. Again, there's a difference between placement and location of services. The location of services refers to the type of environment that is an appropriate place where a particular service would be provided. So for example, speech therapy 3 times per week could be delivered at nursery school, Head Start, childcare, or a pre-K program the child is already enrolled in and attending. Whereas for a preschool child recommended for a center-based program, either in a half or full day, an integrated or self-contained special class, placement would be at an approved preschool special education program. The individual services, related services such as the therapy, the speech, occupational, physical therapy, for example, would then be included, and the center-based provider would fulfill all the services for the child. So I'm going to end here now, and Beth's going to discuss your rights as a parent and highlight some resources that you might find helpful.
Great, thanks, Barb. So on the slide is some questions that parents should ask themselves. So I encourage all parents and then providers who are working with parents that before the family leaves the meeting, that they can answer yes to each of the questions on the slide. And then beyond answering just the yes, I know what these answers are, that they be able to answer these questions for anyone who else was not at the meeting. So when we can answer all of those questions on the slide, and then we can go home, or when our service provider says to us, what happens at the meeting, the parent is able to answer all of those questions with certainty. It really helps the family understand what was developed in the IEP, why things were added, and then what are the recommendations. So I encourage all families to be able to utilize this and use this as a guide when they're leaving their meeting. And then parents have rights. So here's a list of parental rights that families have in regards to the CPSE process. Oftentimes professionals get busy with their day-to-day job responsibilities and make assumptions that parents know as much as they do about the special education process. It's important to remember, as members of the CPSE, parents have the following rights that are identified on the slide. I would encourage everyone, whether you're a service provider, a service coordinator, or a parent, to print out this slide and keep it accessible in your preparation for any CPSE meetings. Develop your child's plan and the meeting and how you want it to run based on ensuring that all of these rights are incorporated, because you'll be better informed, you'll be better engaged in the process, and you'll be an active part of that team process. So on this slide, we have some resources. If you want to gain some additional information about preschool special education, you can contact the New York State Education Department, and their website is there. We also have Parent to Parent of New York State. And then there's also a joint memo from the Special Education Department and the Department of Health, who oversees early intervention. And it's a joint memo on the transition from early intervention to CPSE. So those are some additional resources. In addition to us, you can contact us if you have more questions, you want to email us, you have specifics, you want to find out more information. Here's how you can contact Barb and I going forward. So we thank you for spending this hour with us and hope that you're able to take away some information to either use now or in the future. So Laura, I don't know if there's anyone that has any questions or...
Actually, we have quite a few questions. We do.
Okay.
Okay. First question, great question, is they want to know, are the disability classifications the same for CSE and CPSE?
Yes. So if a child is, if the committee determines that the child has not been determined eligible by the first set of criteria, the 12-month delay, the 33% delay, or a score of 2 standard deviations below the mean, then the committee has the ability to choose from one of those classifications listed on that slide to determine the child eligible for preschool services. But no matter how the child is determined eligible, they're still considered a preschooler with a disability, which is different than CSE, where you actually get a classification based on those classifications identified.
Great. Also, I just want to remind everyone, I know it's 1, but there is Beth and Barbara's number too. So feel free that if you have to go and we can't get to your question, give them a call. They are open, they're there, they're ready to guide you. I know a lot are service providers, but you're working with families and they can help provide you and give you great information. So there's a question about why there are 2 different programs like EI and CPSE, saying that some children don't display symptoms of delays until they're like 2, 2.5. If they already need to start talking about transition to CPSE as soon as they're referred or evaluate, or as soon as they receive services, would it not just be simpler to like eliminate or transition from program to program?
So yes, the reason there's 2 different programs is because early intervention is facilitated through the Department of Health within New York State. So early intervention falls under the Department of Health. Preschool services fall under the New York State Education Department, and that's been a determination through the federal government. So there is 2 systems set up. However, a parent has the opportunity to choose when a child is that close to being eligible for preschool that they don't have to go through the early intervention process. They can make a referral straight to preschool. They would have to wait until the child turns 3 to be able to access those services. But what often happens is when a child is close to that 2 years, 9 months, they can make a referral to early intervention, but early intervention is going to tell them that they can't accept that referral and to move right on to making a referral to CPSE. Or if the child is just under that, as Barb had mentioned before, they will determine the child eligible and they will in early intervention start services, because remember, the family can choose to have that child stay in early intervention past their 3rd birthday. And so we just don't want to automatically send a child to preschool when they might be able to have an opportunity to stay in early intervention past their 3rd birthday. But if any families have any questions or any service providers have any questions on whether to make a referral to early intervention or preschool, or what that transition is going to look like, please reach out to Barb and we can help either the service provider or the family work through that decision process.
Great. The next one, and this is a really great question. Has it always been an option to hold the meetings virtually, or is that a recent development since COVID?
So I think that this has been a recent development since of COVID. So I have heard in the past where a family member couldn't make it and they did a phone conference. So they would ask, this district would ask the parent, can we call you? Maybe they're on their lunch break at work and they're participating by phone. But I think that in light of COVID, the opportunity for this virtual platform is going to continue going forward. I know that all school districts have had to do a virtual platform for annual reviews, as Barb talked about, because of the COVID situation. So my perspective is this is a great way for us to meet when we can't meet in person. My preference, and I think best practice, is that we're all sitting around the table together. But if there is a reason why that can't happen and we have to get the meeting, then we need to look at all other viable possibilities to hold that meeting.
Great, thank you. The next one is, why is there no service coordinator for CPSE?
Because it's a philosophical shift. In early intervention is a family model. It's about the family. It's having the family look at not only what the needs of the child is, but what the family is. And so they utilize a service coordinator to support that facilitation. When a child moves to preschool, it's an educationally based program. So while the family is a valuable member of that team, it's not based around what are the needs of the family unit. And so they only look at educationally what is provided. And so we don't utilize the service coordinator to assist the family because the focus is on the child specifically and the services that are identified to be a one-to-one correlation with that child to support their development.
Great, thank you. Can a preschooler receive extended year services like speech or OT?
Yes. So,
CPSE, they said. Yep.
Yes. So children in CPSE can absolutely receive extended school year services if they've been identified through the committee process to show regression and to need that service. So ESY is identical to CSE in the school age process and goes through the same criteria, and it's a committee decision. So not every child in preschool will warrant the need for ESY services, but it is available to them should they need that, and it will be reviewed at a child's annual review.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of people who have some very specific questions as far as getting a list of locations where you can get CPSE evaluations other than using the our Rochester School District, and then very specific things in regards to if a child has a certain diagnosis, what they're qualified for. And I'm thinking, as well as the Monroe County who's the Monroe County representative. And I'm wondering if that would, I'm going to have that person reach out to you and Barbara so that those are the types of things that sounds like they get very, very specific, and you could help provide them much more guidance on that and give them much more detail on that. And just noting the time of it being 1:15. So I'm wondering if it would help. Just last question, I'll kind of wrap it up. But please feel free, if we weren't able, we have some great questions, weren't able to get to all your questions. I've worked with Beth, I've worked with Barbara, we've worked together for years. They're great. They're a wealth of knowledge. Please reach out, have your families reach out. The last one is, what if someone is doing, does EI and CPSE always have to be done in some type of a school setting? What if the parent has decided not to send them to preschool?
So this is where we talked about the bricks and mortar. So preschool is a system, and that's what Barb was trying to get us to think about. Preschool is a system just like early intervention. And so when we go to committee to meet, we look at what services does that child need and where is the best location for that child to receive those services. So we should never make the assumption that because the child turns 3, they must get on a bus and drive to that preschool bricks and mortar setting. It could be that that's not the appropriate place for a child because they're already in a daycare setting. So they're already being socialized around peers. They're already in group learning. And so we would want that language service or that special education service to push into the current least restrictive environment that that child is already in. And that could be, as Barb said, the home, grandma's house, a daycare provider, or maybe they already go to ABC nursery school and we want to continue that and have that service pushed in. So there is not an assumption that because a child goes to preschool or is determined eligible for preschool services, that they must go to a special education preschool bricks and mortar program.
Great, thank you. Beth and Barbara, I want to thank you for your time. We're also doing this next week, but it's CPSE to CSE. That's great information as well. So please, if you haven't registered and you want more information, please go to our website and register for that. Remember, Beth and Barbara are here to answer your questions. You can feel free to give them a call. This is being recorded. It will also go up on our website. It takes about 4 weeks. So if you want to go back and review it, it will be there. And Beth and Barbara, do you have any closing words?
No, just that please, thank you and reach out to us. That's what we're here for.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Take care and hopefully we'll see you all again next week at the CPSE to CSE webinar. Thank you.